Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Doing all right.
Diggs, I don't know if you said something, but I didn't hear you.
Yeah, that didn't come through. Oh no.
I did mute myself.
There we go.
Great.
Well, week off, so we're back. Week before the next live stream, which is the 30th, I believe. So we've actually polled several questions from the forums. Of course, they open up a forum post, say, hey, post your questions here. Just do one at a time. I scrolled through there. I saw a couple of great questions that had 2 questions to them. You're not going to get them answered. They're going to completely ignore it. Won't even give you the forum answer after the words, because you're just going to be thrown into the ask one question follow-up with no answer to your question. So anyways, so we got a lot to kind of go over, I guess, for tonight. Been playing anything fun, though, before we get started?
I've been starting Frozen Flame. I'll probably do a little bit more of that this week, but I don't expect to enjoy it much. It's kind of like a more fantasy-oriented Valheim survival game. Valheim is the Mistlands. I want to check out the Mistlands update sometime. So one of the someone in the forums turned me on to Fallen Flame, and I said that Valheim is really close enough to the. I don't play survival games very much, but Valheim was okay. But I asked DOP crew if they were planning to play it, and a couple people went ahead and bought it. So I went ahead and bought it, kind of dabbled around a little bit. So Fallen Flame, I want to do Valheim, Mistlands, and at some point I do need to do Final Fantasy. On that note, you gave it a shot and abandoned it for similar reasons to me. You got to get to level 90 in order to get to the part that we want, which is the Island Sanctuary part. And then I was doing New World and Latro. I'll probably eventually get back to that. And last week, also this week, I guess because tomorrow does the update for Dragonflight drop? I think tomorrow Dragonflight drops.
Yeah.
Sog's son will be playing that, so I might play that with him. I probably won't start playing until Tuesday, but last week I was doing. Oh, and I enjoyed some of the Dragonflight stuff. They have these storms that erupt. I mean, it's kind of like the Rift, basically, and so everybody runs in and does these massive PvE battles against the Rift. Is basically what it is. But that was kind of fun doing these little cooperative PvE battles. I don't know, with 50 to 100 other players. I do wish that we had more synergy of abilities. That's kind of one of the things that I'm hoping will be a thing with augments in Ashes, that you'll be able to synergize more easily, kind of like with the concept of EverQuest 2 that never really saw fruition, but I'm hoping we'll, in the future, be able to synergize our abilities a little bit better in MMORPGs in general. But it was pretty fun.
the unopened Dragonflight CE right behind me. It'll probably stay unopened. We'll see.
Yeah, you might give it a shot. I gave a couple of shots to Pulsar Lost Colony recently with some folks like the DOP crew there, and we've been trying this new underwater content. It's like this little submersible science vessel that's going to investigate some signals on some sort of water moon planet thing. It's got this cool cutscene that you see every time you start, and you're going to restart a lot because it is kind of punishing. We're still kind of getting the mechanics of it. Yeah, like we must go deeper, but Pulsar, or like I guess not quite Borrow Trauma because maybe a little too painful comparison. But yeah, it's been fun to try that out and see what they've been doing with the game, going from being this more expansive sort of thing that it, going out into space, getting lost, trying to do the thing, versus this one, you're in a more isolated sort of environment. It's a lot more attrition. You're not going to shops all the time. You have to salvage and scrounge everything. It's a real fun sort of change up on things. And then the other thing I've been playing, I've been not just playing, but looking back into more of the history and story of the game Destiny 2. And there's actually some stuff that I really like about that applies to Ashes of Creation, the FOMO/permanent change. Up until recently, every season that they did from like the earlier days, I want to say like the first 10 seasons or something, are unplayable now. You can't go back. Those events have happened. Those changes have occurred. Some shit went down. You resolved it. Some other shit went down. You resolved it, but there have been consequences. The game moves forward. And while it sounds like they don't want to get rid of any of the content they have anymore, they want to have like a little bit more persistence. I'm not sure if that was part of the Sony deal or not. I do like that I'm coming into this game that's just so storied and there's so much going on that my character just basically wakes up from a pile of bodies somewhere in Russia. And it's like, oh, hey, well, here, let's give you a gun. You've got these superpowers. You're a badass. You're going to become much bigger badass and do some wild stuff. But you don't actually know all the implications of all this stuff that happened before. A lot of that's rolled out through gameplay, and a lot of it you just have to actually watch videos and look outside the game to find all the details. But that's cool. I like that. You're not going to have, for Ashes of Creation, especially because every server is going to have things happen differently. It's not going to be like, you go to different servers at different progress states and you can access the content that way. I'm pretty sure what it's going to be with Ashes of Creation, yes, there might be some large arcs that move the world in different ways and create some branches and close off some other branches, but it's not going to be just a one single unified server sort of thing like Destiny 2 is, where it's constantly moving forward on what might essentially be a Hobson's choice. Here, you can do either of the decisions, but they're going to have the same results sort of thing. That's not the case with Ashes of Creation. The idea is going to be that we direct things and move things and change things differently, and that will push things in different ways, but it also means the content that we've been playing before will no longer be accessible. It's something that I really appreciate. There's one more analogy I'm going to have for that, or one more little statement, but there is one little gripe I'm going to give with Destiny 2. They kind of botched this event. I have no idea why. They've got a community event going for the last 2 weeks of the season. It did not look QA'd. There's some things on the interface that didn't seem right. There's things with the quest layout that didn't seem right. People found ways to dupe materials and just cheat it and just, rake in the resources that way. And they completed it super quickly. And I'd be more upset about it, except the nature of the event is you're now harboring refugees from a faction that you were formerly at war with. And now that you're friends with them, instead of being able to give them good lodgings, you gave them this bombed out area that they kind of make a shanty town in. And what's the result of these upgrades? Going out and taking down literally probably millions of pirate ships full of bounty and booty. Well, you know, some flags here, some benches there. We're collecting resources to build this place up. One ship's worth of salvage would have been enough metal plates to rebuild the entire area and make it real nice. But no, we ended up, you know, doing what would have been a lot of work, except people kind of cheated their way through it. And all we get is like some crappy upgrades. It's like, all right, it's instead of a turd, it's a polished turd. Like, I still feel real bad for them that this is our presentation to these folks who, you know, for all rights, they've been doing the thing for longer than us. I'm not going to get into the story too much. Like, we should be showing them a lot more reverence. But anyway, the thing I think about with, I can't remember the philosopher's name, but the quote about, you know, man never walks in the same river twice, because both the man is different and the river is different. The idea that that I kind of think about for Ashes of Creation, that you're not going to be accessing everything in the same way twice. If you go around, you know, the whole game world once and you come back, everything will be Heraclitus. Thank you. I knew you would know. You know, things will be different. Things will have changed. And even though that physical location you have returned to might still be there, the whole world around you has changed. And in a sense of a game where you actually have like aging and biological functions and things, your character will have aged. Things will have happened to them. They will have gotten some scratches and scars that might, you know, have stuck around. They might have caught a nasty disease. They might have gotten rid of a nasty disease. You know, all in that circuitous travel they did. So, you know, that's kind of the thing that, you know, I think about for Ashes of Creation, the expectation people should have going into it, that this is not a theme park. It's not even a sandbox, because even Ark, I think about, like, you know, that, for example, doesn't have this level of change going on from combinations of systems and the way that players interact with them. Minecraft doesn't even have it. You're not going to have a node system like this in Minecraft. I just think about the amount of code and the amount of specificity required to do that. Ain't gonna happen. You're better off just making your own game at that point. So I've talked for a little while here. I'm gonna pass it off.
Well, you reminded me, just speaking of Ashes of Creation and comparing it, it reminds me that Arcade 2 has a similar story to Ashes of Creation. Surprisingly similar in that it's going to portray a period when Aurora was first discovered and people are starting to settle there. And it says the storyline will involve discovering and solving mysteries of an ancient civilization that have been forgotten for thousands of years. Sounds very, 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 very close to the Ashes of Creation storyline, which will be interesting, especially as we see which one hits first.
It's always the weirdest storyline for me, because it's one of those, and I know there's reasons, and I'm not going to get into details, but if they were so advanced, then why are they gone? Is always my question. These ancient peoples with these ancient magics and technologies, well, if they were so advanced, then what happened to them?
Aliens came and grabbed them. I mean, it's the same ancient Egypt.
Yes, they all transcended.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. That
You got to find a way to.
It's now I can't ignore the fact, though, that we do constantly find older and older inventions and discoveries and things that that push our understanding of just how more advanced certain things were at a certain era, more technologies and things that
I just read an article about how they fairly recently discovered the cooking of Neanderthals and realized that complex cooking was several thousands of years, tens of thousands of years earlier than what they were expecting, and they weren't expecting it to be the case with Neanderthals. But yeah.
the one I was about to give the example, the Antikythera machine, it was the orrery from the ancient Greek era. It was this, bronze machine with wheels that you would be able to turn, where you could kind of see when, like, I guess the eclipses and other like sort of events and cycles were going on. And the fact that their estimate of things is that it wasn't this mass-produced thing or this thing the aristocracy had, like everybody had their grandfather clocks at a certain era, but that this was just some toy on somebody's desk, basically. That they were at a level of tinkering where this was like somebody's like, hey, check out this amazing thing that I made. Isn't it cool? Like, that's the fact that that sort of thing existed. And then we even had that level of like tinkering and stuff going on, like going into the World War era, where we were doing our own level of amazing tinkering and stuff. And then just kind of like, well, we used to know how to do that, but then we melted all the stuff for bullet casing, so we can't really look at the old machines we had made. Like, God damn it. But again, that's that whole moving forward with things, the idea that we should be thinking about may occur in Ashes of Creation, that when we think we have gone above and beyond the need for a certain technology and we stop using it, it might come back to bite us when we realize, oh crap, so we actually need to be really, really good with tin and know how to work with tin incredibly well to get through all the problems we're currently having. We're not having tin, and all the metallurgy involved with it is leaving us hanging because we thought tin was a crap metal and we didn't invest in it across the server. Like, that's the sort of funny thing that I kind of think about could occur.
Omwa mentions, cooking your food and not having to deal with monster worms, and that reminds me of another MMO for Unreal Engine 5, Dune. I forget but I think it's more of a survival game than an RPG. But there's a Dune MMO in the works that I just took a look at.
Anything
Yesterday.
Dune related where you're on Arrakis and it's not essentially a survival simulator of sorts has been done wrong. It's just on the surface. If you're out there and you aren't wearing the full suit, full seal and everything, tighten up right nice and everything, you are doing it wrong and you are going to die. That is Dune. Well, welcome to Arrakis.
Yeah, Dune Awakening. Dune Awakening is a new open world survival MMO in development. And the visuals looked wonderful because it's UE5, so of course it's going to look wonderful, but might be a little bit too survival for my tastes, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. I will anyway. I mean, I find it hard to understand how you have an MMO for Dune classes, and I don't know. It's a little strange to me.
Yeah, well, I guess my question is, what era of Dune is it going to be set in? Because there is such a big, expansive universe. There's like a large gap in some part of one of the stories where the entire MMO could take place.
I guess I've never really gotten past the first couple of books, so
it could be things leading up to before the first book, even.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about some of these questions. There was a comment about Final Fantasy 14. So yeah, we tried to jump into that. I did for about 5 minutes. Googled how do I get my island after I updated the game, and it said, oh, once you're level 90, go to this person, and you have to have completed the main story quest line. So yeah, okay, well, I'm 39 minor. All I've done is trade skill profession classes. I've done enough main storyline to get me to where I could sell stuff and have a mount. Okay, I turned it off. Drives me nuts when you have these sort of bonus activities,
Content.
sort of, yeah, the sort of horizontal gameplay that really doesn't affect, as far as I can tell, in-game sort of play that you make somebody go all the way to the end. It drives me nuts, but so I don't think I'll get to that one, but so
Well, I can see why they would have it at the end for one ridiculous reason. End game resource sink and time sink. All right, I finally unlocked my home. Now I can spend all my millions of gold or gil or whatever they call them in that one, and go out and kill tables and chair monsters and things across the world and bring their carcasses back to decorate my house with. Yeah, end game is a dirty word. Well, if when you hit level 90, that's when you start to do housing. Well, is there going to be a level 100?
but there was something on the forums I did want us to kind of talk about, which was we started to bring up was there was a couple of posts. I don't know if they're related. This idea of shards versus just one large server, kind of like the name of the game just left me.
Eve Online.
Eve Online, and I think I know everybody's thoughts on that, but my immediate thought was no.
Yeah, it's not. There's many reasons it won't work. One big one, of course, latency. If it's only one server, everybody across whatever span that's playing on that server together are all going to be suffering latency together because there's no way it's all going to be able to be nice and tidy. That's why we have things set up in regions like that. You might be able to get close in some ways, but it's just not going to be the level of precision that it needs to be. But then another big reason, of course, if things are occurring at times on schedules when players are expected to be around, that means it's based on specific time zones relative to where the servers are placed. So if you have a global server, well, there's going to be way too much stuff going on when players aren't actually there, or it's only going to be going on. And this is a big, sort of guess because I've seen this happen with other games. They're only going to do things during hours that the developers would be around at the studio, which means if you're not in, the sort of time zones for when those things are going on, you're going to miss them. That's those two among many other things. The other biggest reason, I think biggest overall why they're not going to do that is because that's not what they're doing. They've already been doing different servers. All of testing through Alpha 1 was going through multiple servers. If you were on only one server, it's because the amount of testers they had allocated, they wanted to cram all on one server at the same time as best as they could for a test. Other than that, no, they were usually running multiple servers and trying to keep them all up and running and stable the whole time. So there's just no feasible way to have that work in this environment.
Also seems a little late to be expecting that might be something that can just switch to 5 years into development. I mean, that seems like a decision you're going to make at the beginning rather than 5 years in, um, especially if you're hoping the game will come out reasonably soon. They just did a UE 5.1 update.
Mhm.
So that's the other thing to think about is how often Intrepid is going to try to keep up with these UE5 updates and how that's going to impact release if they do. At some point, you got to lock in your stuff and stick with it, even though, you know, it
That's
might
the
be a
one
little.
thing I wish I knew a little bit more about with Unreal 5, because I know with Unity, going from one version to the next is, it's like a circus, except someone already botched the Ring of Fire jump and ran around and lit the place on fire before you stepped into it. That's like when the update is in process, that whole circus occurs. I don't know if Unreal has that same sort of issue with Unity, like Unity does, where when you upgrade from one edition to the next one, everything breaks.
It seems pretty, based off of some of the other games in development as well. We've talked about Throne and Liberty. What was the other one that was a Legend of Mir? Was Night Crows. Like these are all games that have been, Throne and Liberty's been in development for 4+ years. Well, it was Lineage Eternity or
Mhm.
Eternal before that kind of got canned. So to be able to switch, and it's going to release this 6 months from now, I guess 6 to 8 months from now, supposedly. So to be able to switch from UE4 to 5 in that period of time, it sounds like it's a pretty straightforward process. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, my thought too, though, when I read that post, oh well, they have 50,000 players. I think at times they have to do some tricks with the servers because it gets so overloaded. And then when you think about the target player number that Steven throws out there, which is 1 million, it's like, yeah, I can just imagine one server with 1 million people, like how terrible that experience would be. But more so to the fact I'm super interested in not on playing on all these servers, but I want to see where the storylines change on all these servers. Like I want the multiple shards, not to play them, just to see what comes from them.
Exactly.
But also, with having basically PvP engageable everywhere, you're probably going to want that out as well, to where, okay, I'm just going to start over somewhere else. I've run afoul with the group. I don't want to be on this shard anymore. Time to move somewhere else. Which of course you can't do if it's just one large server. So
I saw someone, that reminds me, I saw someone ask about, and it might be among those questions. It's probably among the questions, not the forums. Uh, General questions. But I think in that list for Q&A, someone asked about.
You know what? I'm going to give a quick answer. Most
Oh.
definitely, 100%, they're going to go with 5.1. From the update notes, for developers building massive open worlds, the release also delivers additional functionality and improvement workflows. World partition now supports large world coordinates, enabling the creation of massive open worlds without loss of precision. Users can also enjoy accelerated source control workflows with world partition, thanks to improved user experience around managing, filtering, searching, and viewing files and change lists. It is also now easier to find content in the world from within your change list and vice versa. In addition, new HLOD, hierarchical level of detail support for water rendering and streaming, enables users to create large bodies in open world with better performance and a smaller memory footprint. That sounds like a pretty big win for the project to me. I have a feeling they're going to hit 5.1.
Also, I think that it bumped the world size up from something like I'm going to say 220K to 80,000 or something like that. I mean, it was a significant increase. So the only problem with that, again, is just because you can doesn't mean you should if you're planning to release at some point. So my point isn't really whether or not they'll go to 5.1. It's just by the time they go to 5.1, and then that adds to their release schedule, 5.2 is going to come out before Ashes of Creation does. So, are they going to try and go to 5.2 and then try to go to 5.3? I'm just saying, at some point, you gotta lock your shit down.
Maybe they don't. Maybe the iterative updates with Unreal 5 are small and easy enough that so long as one of them doesn't tank one of your plugins in a way that you can't go in and quickly fix,
Yeah,
you
maybe
can just roll
Ashes
on
of
with it.
Creation. Maybe Ashes of Creation will release before 2020 too. Maybe before 2020. Yeah, which is what they kept saying right up until 2020.
Almost. Okay. You were about to point out another question. We can jump around on these questions. It's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was something like, can we have an area that is, forgot how it's worded. Something about corruption. It was like, they
Yep, here it is.
basically were,
Have you thought
yeah.
about creating a continuously corrupted land where there would be
Yes.
no rules, no corruption for PK?
Which is,
It exists, right?
contradictory to me, right? It says you're permanently corrupted, but there's no corruption. You can't be permanently corrupted and also have no corruption. But I think what they mean is like the open seas, which is
Yeah.
just FFA and no corruption. So yes, it's
Yeah.
like the open seas.
I don't think an area being overrun with corruption is going to reward players for attacking other players. In fact, if I had to guess, if you're in a corrupted area and another player kills you, I would imagine they would get a massive debuff because they're already in an area that's corrupted. And corruption, surprise, surprise, it's not native to, the former and returning barons. It is, a plague upon you. So, yeah, if you get corrupted in an area that's really corrupted, it should hurt. So I would imagine that's the last place you would want to do it, out in the open seas or somewhere else that's designated open flag. Yeah, sure, Go ahead and
I think
fight.
it's just poorly worded. I think what they're really hoping for is just an area that is free for all and corruption free. Free for all PvP and corruption free. But
I
that can't be
wonder.
a corrupted area. That's
Yeah, it wouldn't be a corrupted area. It would have to be rules, like laws put in at some level that would allow, like, everybody just, free fight in this area. If you don't like it, don't come to the zone.
yeah.
But I
just
don't know
open
if you would,
seas, basically.
yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to have the ability to, as a mayor or a king or anything, be able to define an area like that.
Yeah, but they have since it's bigger and they have these other spaces that don't have nodes, theoretically they could have another space like that. But those
Yeah.
bigger areas are supposed to be for exploration, not for
And
PvP. But
if I'm not mistaken, some dungeons might, and like raid boss proximities might also have open flag sort of thing, specifically so people who want to challenge other people to get to that boss and get that loot have the ability to do so, because now you're entering a take a drink, everybody, risk versus reward environment.
yeah, but I think that's supposed to still be everything, because everything is open world. I don't think it's open PvP, as in I don't think it's free for all PvP. I think it's even those dungeons are supposed to be just it's open world, so you're free to contest those bosses if you want.
Yeah, I read that as exactly what Open Seas is going to be. That's the area they're wanting. Is how I kind of read that.
Yes. Yeah.
Which there was another question about too. It said, when can we expect more information about high seas gameplay and naval combat, and will it be viable for a player to focus almost exclusively on these? Able to respawn at sea, enough EXP opportunities, etc.
That is a fantastic question. And I really hope we get a lot more information about the sort of offshore content that will exist. That said, I kind of think about the way they mean for there to be levels of difficulty and challenge escalating relative to like the tier and how far off the beaten path you've gone. So I wonder how much of that's going to factor in if like if I'm not in the open seas, but off the coast of a tier 4, tier 5 node, I'm expecting that before I get to the open seas, I will be fighting level 40 to 50 range, or even 50 to 60 range adversaries as I get further to the edge of the open zone. Because I believe they want the whole water area to be content. It's not just like, you know, a rock's throw offshore is where the open seas are. There's going to be a fairly decent buffer before you get to that open zone. And that I believe they intend for above and below water to have a lot of content opportunities.
I feel like this is one area where we know quite a bit what's planned.
The actual, like, watching it happen, seeing how they do it, like the gameplay of it, that's probably, you know, maybe a little bit more what I think we kind of want to see at this point. And who knows, we might see it pretty soon, or it might be something that we don't get to see till next year. But I think it's getting close to the point where they're going to want to show it soon.
Well, like the two parts there to into that question, it says, are you able to respawn at sea? No, we already know that, right? If you die at sea, you're going to be respawned at a port or land.
If your boat dies at sea, you're going to respawn at the port. But if you die individually in the midst of a battle, I believe you do respawn on the boat.
I don't think that's.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah,
but
I'll have to read up on that. I'm pretty sure the way I've interpreted it anyways. The other part too is enough EXP opportunities. Well, yeah, PvP nets you EXP plus all the PvE content that will be.
Yeah, but I think there's progression aspects that you have to do away from the open seas. You know, how are you going to upgrade your stuff? I don't think you can craft stuff. I don't think you can upgrade your stuff. You're going to want to.
Well, you go to port.
Well, I don't know. There might be your pirate island in the open seas or whatever, where you've got like your secret magic forge or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you can steal everybody's cargo. I assume that there'll be caravans that go across the sea, so you can participate in that, and you just need to go to a port.
But that's not. But I don't think that's gonna be relatable to gear, right? Gear doesn't drop. You're gonna want to upgrade your gear, and I think you're gonna have to leave the open seas to do that. And I think you're gonna have to participate in progressing nodes in order to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably not going to be doing it on a boat. Like, I just imagine a very Disney cartoon sort of scene of a ship on the high seas and a blacksmith timing the swings with the boat crashing down or something while the little song they're singing is going on. But no, I don't imagine they're going to be able to do too much other than like basic repairs and like, you know, medical triage and stuff like that. While you're on a boat, you would have to dock somewhere. That said, like I was saying, the idea that there might be in the open seas special locations where special crafting stations may exist or resource nodes that you can access. Could be that there's something underwater, that's some old forge from an old civilization that you can somehow like fire it up and access if you're using water breathing or something. And then you can make some real cool, unique stuff down there that you can attach to your ship. But, you know, we would have to discover it, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, but we don't have a lot of information about So
Yeah,
it's not impossible.
it's not impossible.
And this is one of my favorite topics. If Alpha 2 is planned to be a persistent until launch, how will you stop both viewers and testers from getting burned out on the game before it's even launched if testing ends up lasting for years? That's actually a good question, based off of Crowfall and some other things we've talked about. But I don't think I think they're misinterpreting the term persistent. That the server data will be persistent. The server uptime will not be persistent, which is how they will counteract that there will be on times and off times. But the server, because the Alpha 2 will turn into the test server, right? That's the plan.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
I thought Alpha 2 also does not show us all of the land. We
No,
don't.
Alpha 2 is not a full show of everything. It's definitely got some limitations to it for sure. It's not going to be, it's going to be persistent. The other thing I think about for why it's not going to potentially have some of the same burnout issues, or it's going to have an odd sort of different burnout issue: wipes, 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 and more wipes. This is a test. Expect things to be wiped a lot. And there might be periods where it's more stable, and when it seems more stable for a bit, maybe more people will come back. It's like, oh, Ashes has been up for a week without a wipe. Oh shit, I gotta get in there. I gotta get me some of that. And then, maybe for a month or so, it's in a good stable state while other tech is being tested internally before it gets deployed. Then it gets deployed, and then some wipes occur, and some testing occurs, and maybe it's got a little more period of instability and people kind of fade away for a little bit. And then as it gets stable again and some more of the updates manifest, they come back. That said, there could be other broad changes and swings and strokes, like how they're going to try testing the balance of different systems. It might be, the first week of every month is open flag week to see how or not open flag week, but like, we're going to wipe your corruption at the end of the week, so try the system out and see how it is, sort of thing. There's going to be a lot of things they can do that maybe feel like seasonal or daily, weekly, monthly initiatives or whatever, that give them valuable data and kind of curate the experience for us. Also, every month you participate in a certain amount of content, you do a little X, Y, and Z, and you get one seasonal item that you can only get from having participated in the test. You could do that as a way to keep people coming.
Crowfall, Phantom, you were saying reason why Crowfall failed? What was the reason?
It was
too many people playing?
Well, it was a persistent, from alpha to its release, it was basically open the whole time. So you could come by in, play, forget about it. Alpha, when it first opened its servers, was a big deal. It had a lot of views. Transitioning to beta, no. And then launch was essentially a joke because it had been launched. There was nothing neat about it. Now, there were other aspects too. I think it just was not a super fun game, but I'm convinced that a part of the problem was that you had no mystique, you had no unknowns about it. That's part of what drives me to TL right now, is like I can find nothing about it, and it's something that's supposed to release in like 6 months. It's like, what in the hell? Crowfall at release, everybody had basically had a chance to say yes or no to it for years at that point. So
what do you think is the better strategy?
I think the more you can hide, the better. I still think Steven probably is kicking himself that they promised every step of the way would be open development. Like, I have to imagine there are times where they're just like, I wish we could just have a large group come in, spend a week, test the system out under an NDA. Because I think that also adds the intrigue that makes, if you don't know what it's about, it makes you more interested. rather than 2-3 years of videos that I can look at and say, I don't think I'm going to bother spending my money to see whether or not I'm interested.
I kind of think about Crowfall almost like the slow burn sort of post-launch MMO that, it did all right for a little bit maybe, and then it's just kind of hanging around like the later days of PlanetSide 1 or I guess Neocron in the modern era. Neocron's still around. They're still doing stuff with it. I think I played like 5 minutes and kind of got lost or something, but yeah, it's still a thing. You can still do stuff in it. If you and like a community of 500 people wanted to jump in and start playing and like making a thing of it, oh yeah, I'm sure you'll have a great time. But it's just kind of in this like slow burn sort of state. It's got, I guess, enough people playing it that it keeps the doors open, but and they're continuing to do stuff with it, I guess.
Well, I guess I should clarify, they are going back on that initial word or promise that they are doing some NDA testing prior to A2. We don't know who or when. I keep checking my email regularly because it's exactly what I want to test, harvesting, crafting, but they are doing that. So
Say it was NDA testing?
Yeah. It'll be under NDA.
Yeah, the NDA spot testing that is not Alpha 1 testing and is not necessarily Alpha 2 testing. Yeah. It is spot testing. It is very small group spot testing that they've talked about. We have no idea if it's been done at all to any point. Mm-hmm. Nobody who works there has said anything that I'm aware of, any official or unofficial channels. I don't know nothing. I
don't think so, because even when we had,
he said NDA. It was specifically mentioned on the last stream, 2 streams ago.
Yeah. But even when we've had that before, we've known that it's going on.
Right. So I think they would talk about it, not to like rub it in anybody's faces, but just as a general coordination thing. It's like, oh hey everybody. Or not, oh, hey, everybody, but we have just sent out, a few emails to a select group of people that we're hoping to have help us, with the spot test. That might be the only announcement. Maybe they say it. Maybe it's just, included in part of a message somewhere. Doesn't have to be a big sort of thing. But I'm pretty sure they will make some sort of announcement when it does occur to kind of give people a heads up.
There's a great question in here that...
Wait. I did want to reiterate that it does say that there will be regions of the map that are not revealed in Alpha 2. Just to be clear about that. Okay.
I don't think any of the underground's even going to be in.
But to go back to the mystique, part of why this idea of being under NDA and only showing little bits at a time that I think is such a good marketing tool. There was a question that said, during the prelude stream to the Extra live stream, a developer introduced himself by saying he was working on an unannounced system. What system? Are there many entire systems that you haven't mentioned the existence of yet? One question, people. I would have loved any of those. One question that answer that is not going to get answered. They wouldn't anyways. But that leaves me, I'm super curious now, like what system? What is it, something we've been told about, something we don't know about? Like what is it that's unannounced? I'm just super curious.
Space combat. Who knows?
I mean, you have any ideas?
Someone at the studio knows. I think a lot of people at the studio probably know. I don't know if everybody does. This might be a secret. This might be a secret system.
I think what do we not know about?
That's a good.
Or is it something we
question.
know about we just never seen in place? Like, is it just a
Unannounced?
semantics?
I hope they don't think of that as 2 questions. That seems like.
Well, I don't think they're going to announce. They're going to probably not answer it anyways.
Yeah.
Unannounced. What could it be?
I don't know.
I mean, I can think of things that'd be kind of fun and interesting. Like, I always joke about having something in games where you have to, like, get drunk or some altered state to be able to see like certain passages or interact with certain things, but your character is like actually impaired, like they're wobbling around, they're not going to fight well, they're going to be missing attacks and stuff. That sort of thing where having different layers and filters and things where things are hidden in the world that have to be accessed through magical scrying or other sorts of means, maybe not being drunk, but I think that could be a hidden system, something that hasn't been revealed yet. That would be an interesting sort of thing.
I mean, I'm super curious. We know about weather. We know.
I think Ombla convinced them to implement the stank stat.
Stank stat. That could be. If we're gonna have a weather system, being upwind and downwind of things could matter.
Maybe it's the cataclysm system.
I can smell the enemy coming. Really? Yeah. No, they're coming from that way. I can smell it on the breeze.
Oh, very curious, but see that works. Now, if it's unannounced, you don't know. It makes you curious. Makes me really curious. Of course, that then I guess can then lead to the letdown when all of your ideal fantasy thoughts don't come to fruition, and it's something really stupid, like, oh, you can take pictures or something in a game.
Or like I rebuilt the entire chat system from scratch, so we're not using Photon, or something like that. It's like unannounced, appreciated. Wasn't what we were expecting.
Yep. Like, is it something that you even know you're playing with? There's a lot of great questions around here. So there was another one. Is it still the intention of Intrepid to release the character creator before the launch of Alpha 2? I honestly could care less. I would rather them just get to Alpha 2.
If it's easy enough for them to make it its own separate thing that you can make your character while you're waiting to like do the full rest of the install or whatever, cool. But yeah, if it's something that's an encumbrance that will get in the way, I'd rather they just go for it and just get Alpha 2 out there, and we can create our characters on the server screen.
Steven promised.
It's a good advertising tool, we know, but it's weird to be using an advertising tool for an Alpha 2.
Yeah, speaking of, well, we kind of already know this. This was when I'm still thinking of the systems. There's another question: will players be able to create their own NPCs? That would be interesting. Kind of not. The example.
I think it's been talked about a little bit in the context of creating your not champion, but your champion. Yes, in the military node that you would have your goober that you would train up and give the gear to, who fights for you as proxy in the arena or whatever for who gets to be the leader. So I think you might actually get to make an NPC.
Well,
there's some stuff similar to that. Your mercenaries for your caravans, to guard your caravans and to guard your freehold. There's some stuff similar to that.
Yeah, and you can hire farmhands too, right? That's a part through the app, that the companion app they'll make. You can tell your free farmhand to queue up tasks or whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll have some ability.
How much we're like fine detailing and putting the tattoos and everything, I don't know. We might not get the same level of detail and stuff just because, like, why increase all the draw calls and stuff that you need to put on a character model if there's going to be 20 of them and they're just there, like, picking away at a boulder or something.
And the example, so it said the Dragon's Dogma had everyone make one. An NPC was basically an AI player. It leveled, gave you skills, armor, weapons. You customized how it looked. I mean, that's essentially what we'll probably be able to do with all these NPCs that we interact with
Yeah.
or hire.
It'll be nice. It'd be nice to be able to do that. Sure.
Here was another one about the whole land management system, which I'm extremely ready to tear apart. At the launch of the game, it's likely we'll see mass harvesting of resources in the starting zones, causing resource management to be very difficult for guilds that hold those areas. Will there be any protections in place to make sure the land doesn't go barren? I hope not.
Yeah, why not?
I
I don't
know
think those
that
areas are supposed to be controlled by guilds in any case, but yeah, the expectation is that if stuff goes barren, it's gonna trigger something.
it will be weeks to months before you'll be able to have the tools to clear cut a region, to harvest everything out of it, to kill and remove everything from it. It is not going to happen on day one. It is not going to happen in week one. It's probably not going to be a month one sort of thing, though. You'll see the effect of people having used the starting zone probably from, day one versus month one. But that's any MMO. There's always a whole bunch of people in the starting zones in MMOs.
Yeah.
The fact that you're going to have a hardware sort of gate that you don't have the tools and the skills to actually harvest everything is going to make people, go out and spread out on new frontiers and get where the getting's easier rather than stay around to the area where it's like, well, I wish I could learn to chop wood, but every Thomas, Richard, and Harold out here is, chopping all the branches off the trees before I can get there. I can't even skill up. So, I think that's what's going to happen is that there will be forces that push players away from the starting zones pretty quickly, but they won't be harvested out for, months down the road until, all the tools and things to even do that are possible.
Really, it's all kind of starting zones anyway. I mean, everything is stage 0. So you might not have amenities there close by, but you're still going to be able to, if you have your tools from the starting zone, you'll be able to go out pretty much anywhere and level up stage 0 node, I would think. But also, I'd also think that right. So you could probably in some area make it barren of the tier 1 stuff, right? And so you go away from the starting area, which is a good thing. But if they really needed to, I'm sure the devs can tweak stuff to have that stuff reappear if they wanted to.
It wouldn't be barren. It would be temporarily depleted.
Yeah.
Well, and Nura, you kind of hit on my thought. This is what's going to promote everyone leaving the starting area. Like this is how you get people spreading out. So, I mean, what guild is going to want to try to develop this area anyways, if you have the constant disruption of new players coming in, exploring, tearing down your trees? That also the solution they had posted was, well, maybe first season is spring and that causes vegetation to respond at a faster rate. Well, that just means people are going to be able to hoard more resources. Resources are supposed to be rare. So I don't think that's an answer. But also, I think you got both. I forget which one of you said it was, you can't, Diggs, you might have. It's like you're not going to be able to really do much of this anyways because you don't have the right, level 3 node really is at what point you'll be able to start pushing this stuff through. Because we all are talking about we don't have land anyways until it's level 3.
I think one other thing that's really nice and why it'll push people out and give them a reason to leave, theme park starts. You start in your faction starting zone. This sucks. Everything's exhausted. I went through a 1-hour queue to get in to find everything's already exhausted and mined out and tapped out, and there's people already waiting to harvest them before me. That sucks. And I want to go to a different zone so I can do it there, but I can't get there because everything's level 20 and 30 in the way, and I'm just going to die along the way. That sucks. That's theme parks. This is different. Everything's going to be, fairly low and leveled out to the point where if you stick to the roads, you can go wherever the hell you want to first start settling down and try to put your roots down. And if you find too much competition, keep on moving. You find too much competition, keep on moving. Eventually things will reach a sort of equilibrium and people will end up where they end up.
We're not really trying to turn the starting areas into metropolises anyway. So,
I like the idea that everybody gets the metropolises set up near the racial starting areas or whatever, so that way when players first come in, they're met with this like grand castle in the horizon. That's cool. I like that. I think that's great. Functionally, I don't think it's worthwhile, but
it could be close. It's just not going to be right at the starting area.
Exactly.
It can be close
exactly.
to it. It won't be right there.
I think this was a good question too. It says, when a group in an overland dungeon kills an early boss quickly to set the difficulty of a deeper boss, how long will the deeper boss remember his difficulty level if nobody kills the early boss again? Is it forever, or is there a certain time period associated with that? So if you're for those who are unclear, if you enter in to a dungeon and you sort of get to your first low level boss and you just annihilate it, that changes the level of the difficulty of the bosses later on, which would be another interesting PvP scenario if you take just some really high powered people and you go go to a frequented dungeon, just toast the first boss so that the people that come along behind you, stumble into a very difficult encounter. That would be fun to watch.
But if they take it down, they're going to get a lot better loot for it. So there's the risk reward on going with that approach. You might underestimate them. They might have more than a raid's worth of people in reserve to just overwhelm the situation, knowing that not all of them are going to get full loot.
I would hope it stays whatever level it is. I don't know. I could see where that'd be.
I feel like that's such a weird thing too, because it makes me wonder if people would lowball a boss and intentionally take 30 minutes on something they know they can burn down in 3 because they want the later boss to be squishy. And if there's any way to compensate for that, if there's like some sort of a baseline that's established that, well, based on your performance, we know you're at least, give you like a ELO rating or whatever, like at least a 1400. Even though you fought that battle like a bunch of 800s, you're still 1400 caliber and you still have the same loadout you do 1400 content with. So we're going to assume that you're still doing like 1400 tier, content. So off you go. You think you've tricked the system and you're going to stumble over your trickery.
Yeah. Unless the loot tables change, I guess. But
yeah, well,
we'll find out.
I would imagine if something's changing the difficulty, like you're seeding the later difficulty with an earlier boss, that would change the loot tables for sure.
We're almost out of time. There are 2 things I want to go. So I reworded the cosmetic question. This was one that we had talked about, I think, last time we were live, maybe. So that did not get answered because it was multiple questions. So I asked it, are freehold cosmetic skins purchased from the store limited to being applied only to specific tiers? For example, there are currently 3 tiers of summer freehold appearances for sale, but the most recent offerings, Wardens in the Wild, includes the more Wardens Blind, which does not specify any tier. I think it's a fair question. That's one I don't know that will get answered, but
It never get answered.
Well, I don't think they know, but I don't think at this point it's unfair. I don't think it would be fair to say, to retroactively, restrict things that when you purchase them were not limited. But we'll see. There was someone that asked a similar question to that too. It was what ship?
Oh, the shipbuilding, yeah.
What ship or building size restrictions are the monthly cosmetics subject to? Again, going to the tiers, and when you have no, it's unknown, it's confusion. I feel like it shouldn't be restricted by tier unless it's been told to. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and we had also talked about on the last episode, I think, mounts, that how close to the type of mount does the skin have to be, or am I going to put a Stufferton mount, a Stufferton skin on a leaping lizard, or a teeny little rabbit or something?
Sorry, I have to answer this. I'm
Um,
not 50, but I'm approaching it. I got a little way, a little time.
yeah, you got some time.
Mhm,
I did cross into the 40s. So
mhm.
there was the other one that I thought was a very interesting question, because I just had never heard about it, or just maybe not heard about it, but hadn't thought about it. And now I just lost where I had it. Here. How do freeholds work with corrupted players? Since freeholds are not PvP zones and they are still able to enter a freehold's boundary and access the content, what's stopping griefing players from hiding in a friendly or guild member's freehold boundary where they can't be attacked back and can log out in safety? That's a fair question. As far as we know, that seems like a viable option. We have been told a corrupted player can go into their freehold.
That's the only chest they can use, is the one on their freehold.
Now, we've been told they can't trade with anyone else, but we've not been told that I couldn't set permissions for Neuro to come to my freehold at any point, even if corrupted, because that would be a way to circumvent some of that.
I don't understand what you're circumventing other than time.
Well, I mean, if you're not losing anything. If you can just log out, right? Because part of it too is, as you're corrupted, it takes 60, 90 seconds to log out. So if you just
Okay, so you log out. When you come back in, you're still going to be corrupted.
Yeah, but it might be easier to wait out the corruption at like 2 a.m. instead of like peak gaming time, when you're being hunted by the people you just stole from and brought your stuff back.
Okay, you still have to work off the corruption.
You still have to work off the corruption. I think more than anything, it's the ability to dump off your stuff at a freehold. After that, yeah, you're going to suffer some gear damage, so you could just run around naked and let people beat you up, and then you're going to have some XP debt. Whatever, go back to playing the game. You knew what you were getting into when you ganked that person.
It opens up some possibilities. Potentially.
Possibilities. I don't see what the great possibilities are. Okay, you log out. That's fine. Log in. You still have to do the same stuff.
Yeah, it's
still show up on the bounty hunter maps.
Yeah. You're still you're not gonna have, unless they've said that your stuff is going to expire while you're offline. I would imagine you have to be on for it to elapse.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's one of the biggest things that will deter people from becoming corrupted? One is XP loss. The other is loss of items, right? So if you're able, that's where this could potentially be a circumvention, is if you can go to a friend's freehold that's nearby.
It's not loss of items, it's degradation of items.
No, you'll lose stuff if you're corrupted enough. Yeah. You'll lose more stuff.
But that's not the big deterrent is degradation of items, degradation of stats, and your XP debt and loss. It's 4x all of the death penalties. So,
but item loss is one of them. So if you can circumvent that in a way.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be particularly significant, but
we'll have to see how the corruption system actually works and feels before like those sort of considerations will really be a big deal for us.
Family summons as well. So can you go to a freehold and be summoned away?
You cannot be summoned. No summons or trading. Family summons is turned off for corrupted people.
Where's any more that
There were a couple here I wanted to address real quick. Will it be possible for a cleric to spec into a viable DPS role with the right secondary archetype and skill points? Yeah, if you're able to do a constant self-healing sort of build where every third ability you're doing is healing and buffing you while doing damage stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah, you're gonna be less of a probably high output DPS and more putting out steady damage while constantly being able to keep yourself topped off and kind of win through attrition sort of thing. I would imagine there's going to be stuff like that, plus or minus what other sort of things like, you know, your secondary archetype. You know, obviously, if you're going to go as like a cleric rogue, I would imagine you're going to have some sneaky business. You'll potentially be able to up your damage output with that, or mix it with some wizard, or you know, whatever.
And there's other augments besides just class archetype augments. But my thing is just don't, if you're a cleric rogue, don't expect to be able to out DPS a rogue, a rogue primary archetype.
Right.
That probably is not.
Or at
happen,
least don't expect to do it the same way as them. It might be that you rain curses and debuffs on somebody before you go in for that backstab or whatever.
I think you're not going to out DPS a rogue primary archetype if you're a cleric primary.
I have to say, I mean, I actually would like to see DPS and a healer. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is that you're supposed to be able to move the dial closer to some different archetype. So yeah, if you want to be able to do,
I mean, the Shadow
some
Priest
DPS,
the Shadow Priest was the most fun class I have ever played in World of Warcraft, and my DPS was top if done correctly, and still providing heals on the side. So that was probably the most fun class that I've played in World of Warcraft, a version of a class.
I might have been max raid gear spec, but my shaman was stupid powerful. And being able to shut people down with the all the various abilities and engineering stuff I had, it made a mess of people on the battlefield. The other one that I wanted to bring out here was what do you plan to do to address the inevitable quickly rising meta when the game launches? I personally never liked having meta or getting booted, so if there's room to play what or how do you want to would be truly wonderful. The
answer to that is no DPS meters.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of no DPS meters, and I don't think there's ever necessarily going to be a best in slot. I think you're going to be able to maybe make a build that works pretty well with a certain combination of things, and it might work well for certain environments that you expect it to work in, but there might be situations where you are softly or hard countered by players or enemies in some various different ways. And that's what it's going to be. There is definitely not going to be the legendary slot, best in slot item for every class that everybody has. Not only is that just not mechanically how the game is going to work, because anything of that magnitude, there's going to be one of on a server, not one per player. But how everything kind of moves and fleshes out and blends, it's all going to be based on all the tools that are available, and it's going to be different every guild, every region, every whatever sort of kingdom they're in, or religion, or whatever. There's going to be a lot of things feeding into the abilities that any character is going to have, to the point where it's probably going to be out there and wide open enough that there isn't really a specific best build or meta that everybody relies on. And if it turns out that's the case, then they're probably going to be able to go through and do a hard look and analyze why it's going on. And an update will occur, and everyone's like, oh, you broke my meta, nerf me. It's like, no, it was something that we unfortunately had some oversight, and it became something that was just too easy to use and abuse. So we made a modification to it. You know, it's magic. You're in the world of Era. One of the gods did it. Blame them.
I have to say, I don't think you can not have a meta. You know, when you're using computers that are calculating numbers and scores, you're not ever going to not have a meta, right? I just don't think that's possible. You're going to have players, thousands of players, that all they do is play this game for 12, 16 hours a day. They're going to discover what the better combinations are. There's just no way around it. You're working with numbers. It's going to take time.
It doesn't mean that that meta is relevant. What matters is, are you capable of defeating the content?
What MMORPG out there exists where the meta is not relevant?
Probably most. Is that what you're pursuing when you play MMORPGs? What the meta is?
That's
the meta is.
Well, that's not for you.
There will always be people trying to pursue a meta, but the meta is not really relevant. What matters is whether or not you can defeat the content.
It's relevant to a lot of people.
Some people are going to make up stuff. They want to be as efficient as possible, and they're going to tell you they've found the most efficient way, and that's most important to them. But what's actually important is whether or not you can defeat the content.
I think but that's the point, though, is if you can do it more efficiently. If you're going to have someone that goes to a website and says, you're the wrong rogue build, get out of my group. Like, that's, I think, the question here. But part of that...
There will always be people who say that, whether there's actually a meta or not.
Yeah. So one of those ways, with the group size being larger, I think that's one way to get around it, right? If you just open up the number of groups, because a smaller group, you're going to get, I'm trying to think in World of Warcraft, once polls really no longer centered on saps and, crowd control, rogue use. When I played anyways, rogues dropped off. Like, what was the use of a rogue in a group of 5? Right. But I think having larger groups makes up for that in a certain ways. Challenges within the open dungeon structure also, I think, will be helpful. So I'm not arguing for there to be a meta. I'm just saying, I think when you have computer systems that are calculating numbers, it is impossible to not have a meta, because people will figure out what the best is. That's just that, and there will be. That's why there's always rebalancing over time.
If there's just so much variance in side grades and how you can mix and match and combine and make things work, it might be that people settle on metas, and yet there's still a universe of options and combinations for you to try and enjoy and excel with in ways that people haven't yet. I think that's one of the things that'll be nice with the game, is that I'm just going to bring it back again. Don't mean to go back to the beginning of the episode for a callback so much, but Destiny 2 very much has that. There's various different mixtures and combinations and variations for how you build your character, what sort of arsenal you build, how you use it, how you actually utilize the different weapons together, even without talking about your power set, how how everything's all set up and configured, how you balance your attributes. It's a really deep sort of meta that people can spend a lot of time and effort and a lot of specificity getting into. But at the end of the day, I can just put any old crap on, just throw anything that, kind of loosely works together, and, go do like 90% of the content without feel like I'm holding the team back in any way.
And the other thing that's so unique about this is what is the meta to when you're open raids and you have people PvPing all around you, Like what does the meta become when you're also having to fight other players?
Spec for PvP. If your focus is PvP, everything you're specking into is PvP. One-shot kills, super defenses that let you get out of trouble, crowd control, stuff like that. And it might not be viable in dungeons. Like, oh yeah, you can ace any one single monster. You can lock that thing down and beat it up and, you know, get its name and then beat some other enemy up and give it the other one's name. You know, whatever you want. You're going to be great at single targets. But when you're expected to be fighting a horde of, you know, 10 to 20 things at a time, and you need to be smacking and moving, you're not going to have the right build for it. You need to be like, you know, jumping up and slamming down AoE hammer strikes and stuff. So that's where I kind of think that's going to happen, is that we will see the specificity of meta play out in people trying to go full PvP, people trying to go full PvE, and people trying to straddle the line between the two, possibly trying to use their close range and long ranged weapon as like the ones they use for the different situations even.
Yeah, also if what really matters is what the augments that you've chosen for your specific class and how you're synchronizing your augments with the augments and abilities of other people in your group. And just because you found one way that works with your specific group does not mean that that's going to work best with a different group. So really meta is almost kind of meaningless if augments work the way they're supposed to work.
So the paladin goes out there. All right, everybody, I've got my aura of cheese stank. Now everyone use your cheese stank enhanced abilities. None of us spec'd into cheese stank. We told you not doing cheese stank. All right, well, damn, that was a waste of synergy. I'm telling you, this cheese stank build rocks. Yeah, but we're not doing it. So it might be the best build we're not going to try. Now you just smell like, you know, footy Roquefort or something. I don't know. Do.
Anything else?
Yeah, I guess the stank is also a callback.
Yes.
I think that's enough of those, actually. No, I'm excited for the next one. Looking forward to see what they reveal, what gets answered, what they're going to show us. Remember, everybody, if you want to get the coolest cloak in the game ever that they've shown so far, if you want to be like a ranger that stalks around the forest, that's still on sale on the market for like another week or two.
There's one more I want to close with because I think this is a significant question. Since travel time is significant, planning a night of dungeon delving with friends could get complicated. What is your philosophy for making sure overland dungeon content will be available in an open world with a high population? Average groups won't have time to travel between many dungeons to find one that is not already occupied by a superior force, especially since servers will have a peak playtime. I think that's a fair question, especially when it comes to, because this is a PvE question to the players that are looking to just go dungeon crawling, basically. I think there's some answers to it on the surface of what he said. So the overland dungeons are supposed to be very large, so it sounds like you'll be able to probably find a camp spot pretty easily. And then the question would just become, you know, do you have to compete with another group that shows up or not? But I think it's an interesting question, especially with 80% of the world being 80% of the dungeons being open world dungeons. It's just how is this group going to kind of react to the world? The group that has 40 minutes, an hour to play.
That is something that I've thought about for the game. It's going to be one of the hardest things to overcome is accommodating short session players, especially when they have a hard time coordinating with other people that they want to be playing with. It is definitely going to be a weakness of the game in terms of like people that's the way they play and play together. I don't know that there's necessarily a great solution, and I don't mean to be kind of cold about it, but I don't actually know if that's necessarily up to the developers to resolve. But I will say this. I'm eager to see things that will occur in and around towns and cities and metropoli. Like you find some sewer that leads to an old like burial site or something, or some weird catacombs or whatever, and suddenly you don't even have to leave town for this long and winding sort of piece of content where you might go in one direction and find other players, but there's 12 directions you can go, and they aren't all being addressed by players all at the same time. That would be maybe the sort of thing that people would be able to just pop on and jump into. I also have no idea. There might be some things that are kind of semi-instanced, that are designed to accommodate players to this extent.
20% of them, although I'm guessing it's more than 20% of the players that will fit into this, at least initially. So, it's an interesting question. Well, we are actually a fair amount over, about 30 minutes. So this has been a good night. We'll have plenty more to talk about next Sunday. So hang out with us. Come join us. Everyone have a great week. Like I said, the live stream is on the 30th. Come hang out with us on Discord if you want. We are kind of jumping games. I don't know if anyone heard that or not, but
yeah, we all heard that.
Yeah.
That sounds like the show's over sound on your side.
That's a chime. It means it's time to go. But everyone have a good week, and we will see you back here next Sunday.
See you then, everybody. Take care.